Amara Williams stood outside the big glass doors of First National Bank and took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast with excitement. She held her purple backpack tight against her chest. Inside that backpack was something very special. It was 2 years of hard work. It was $847 in cash that she had saved all by herself. The sun was shining bright on that Tuesday afternoon. Amara was 15 years old, and this was a big day for her. She had been planning this moment for weeks. Today she would open her very first bank account without her parents helping her. She felt grown up and proud. Amara pushed open the heavy door and walked into the bank. The air conditioning made her skin feel cool after the hot afternoon outside. The bank was big and fancy. The floor was made of shiny marble that reflected the lights from above. There were 5 counter windows where bank workers helped customers. About 10 people were waiting in lines. Some were on their phones. Others looked bored and tired. She got in line behind an older man in a suit. While she waited, Amara opened her backpack and looked inside. She had organized everything so carefully. There was a plastic bag with all her cash. She had counted it 3 times last night to make sure. Next to the money was her notebook. This notebook was special. It had every single babysitting job she had ever done. She wrote down the date, the family name, how many hours she worked, and how much she got paid. Her father had taught her to keep good records. He always said that being organized was the key to success. Amara smiled, thinking about her dad. He was a sergeant in the army and was deployed far away. Before he left 6 months ago, he had told her how proud he was of her saving money. He said that when he came back home, he wanted to see her bank account. He wanted to see proof that she was learning to be responsible with money. That made Amara want to save even more. The line moved slowly. Amara used the time to think about why she was saving. She wanted to buy a laptop computer. Not just any laptop, but a good one that could run coding programs. Amara loved computers. She was taking coding classes at school and at the community center. Her teacher said she had real talent. But the school computers were old and slow. At home, she had to share an old laptop with her 2 younger brothers. If she had her own laptop, she could practice coding whenever she wanted. She could build apps and websites. She could learn even more. Finally, it was her turn. The man in the suit finished his business and walked away. Amara stepped up to window number 3. Behind the glass was a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She had blonde hair pulled back tight in a bun. Her name tag said Sandra Mitchell. Sandra was typing something on her computer. She did not look up when Amara arrived. "Hello?" Amara said in a friendly voice. "I would like to open a savings account, please." Sandra stopped typing. She looked up at Amara. Her face did not smile. Her blue eyes looked cold. "How old are you?" Sandra asked. "I'm 15, Amara answered. She tried to keep smiling even though Sandra's tone made her feel unwelcome. "Do you have a parent with you?" Sandra asked. She looked around as if searching for an adult. "No, ma'am," Amara said politely, "but I have all my documents. I have my student ID, my social security card, and my birth certificate. My school's financial literacy program said I could open an account by myself if I have these papers." Amara pulled out a folder from her backpack. Inside were all the documents she needed. She had checked the bank's website 3 times to make sure she had everything. She had even called last week to confirm what she needed to bring. Sandra took the folder but barely looked at it. "And how much are you depositing?" she asked. Amara's face lit up with pride. $847, she said. She carefully took out the plastic bag with her money. She had organized the bills by amount. 20s in one stack, 10s in another, 5s and 1s in smaller stacks. She placed the bag on the counter. Sandra's eyes went wide when she saw all that cash. But she did not look impressed or happy for Amara. Instead, her expression changed. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. She stared at the money, then at Amara, then back at the money. "Where did you get this money?" Sandra asked. Her voice was not friendly anymore. It sounded suspicious and cold. Amara felt confused by the change in Sandra's attitude. But she answered honestly. "I saved it from babysitting," she explained. "I've been babysitting for 2 years. I work for 5 different families in my neighborhood. I save almost everything I earn." Sandra picked up the plastic bag. She held it like it was something dirty. "This is a lot of cash for a girl your age," she said. She was not asking a question. She was making an accusation. "Yes, ma'am. I worked really hard for it," Amara said. She was starting to feel uncomfortable. Why was Sandra acting this way? I have records of all my work. Would you like to see my notebook? Sandra did not answer. She was staring at Amara in a way that made her skin feel prickly. We can't just accept large amounts of cash from people without proper verification, Sandra said slowly. This money could be from anywhere. It could be from anything. Amara felt her stomach drop. What was Sandra saying? But I just told you where it came from, she said. Her voice was smaller now. I babysat for it. I can show you my records. Anyone can write things in a notebook, Sandra said dismissively. That doesn't prove anything. Other people in the bank were starting to notice. The woman at window 4 glanced over. A man waiting in line turned to watch. Amara felt her cheeks getting hot. She was starting to feel embarrassed and confused. I don't understand, Amara said quietly. I called last week. The person on the phone said I could open an account if I had my documents and my deposit. I have both of those things. Sandra crossed her arms. Well, we have policies about suspicious deposits. Money laundering is a very serious crime. We can't just let anyone walk in here with a bag full of cash and expect us to take it without questions. Money laundering? Amara knew what that meant from a movie she had watched with her dad. It was when criminals tried to hide illegal money by putting it in banks. Was Sandra saying that Amara was a criminal? I'm not laundering money, Amara said. Her voice was shaking now. I'm 15 years old. I babysit kids. I play with them and make them dinner and help them with homework. That's where this money came from. But Sandra was not listening. She picked up her phone and pressed a button. Mr. Peterson, could you come to window 3, please? I have a situation here. A situation? Amara looked around nervously. More people were staring now. She saw an old woman whisper something to the person next to her. A teenage boy had his phone out. Was he recording? Amara wanted to disappear. A tall man in a dark suit walked over from an office in the back. His name tag said Robert Peterson, supervisor. He had gray hair and glasses. He looked annoyed, like Sandra had interrupted something important. What's the problem, Sandra? He asked without looking at Amara. Sandra pointed at the money on the counter. This girl wants to open an account with over $800 in cash. She claims she babysat for it, but she has no real proof. She's here alone, no parent. I think this needs a manager's approval before we proceed. Mr. Peterson finally looked at Amara. His eyes moved from her face to her backpack to the money on the counter. He frowned. I do have proof, Amara said quickly. She held up her notebook. I keep records of every job. I have dates and names and everything. And I have my documents for opening an account. I did everything right. But Mr. Peterson did not reach for her notebook. He did not seem interested in her proof. Instead, he sighed like she was causing him a big problem. Young lady, you have to understand. We have protocols about suspicious deposits. Banks have to follow very strict rules. Money laundering is a serious federal crime. We can't just accept large amounts of cash without proper verification of its source. There was that word again. Suspicious. Why was her babysitting money suspicious? Amara had never felt so confused and upset in her life. She had been so excited to come here today. She had been so proud of herself. Now she felt like she was being accused of being a criminal. All around them, the bank had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Amara felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked hard to keep them from falling. She would not cry. She would not let them see her cry. Mr. Peterson stood next to Sandra's window with his arms crossed. He looked down at Amara like she was a problem he needed to solve quickly. Amara held her notebook tighter. Her hands were starting to shake a little bit. She had never been treated like this before in her whole life. Let me see what you have, Mr. Peterson said. He did not sound kind or patient. He sounded like he was doing her a favor. Amara opened her notebook with trembling fingers. She had used a ruler to make neat columns. Every page was organized perfectly. Date in the first column. Family name in the second column. Hours worked in the third column. Amount paid in the fourth column. She even had a running total at the bottom of each page, so she always knew how much she had saved. She pointed to the first page. See, this is from 2 years ago when I started. The Johnson family was my first job. They have twin boys who are 7 now, but they were 5 when I started. I watched them every Friday night for 3 hours. They paid me $10 per hour, so that's $30 each week. Mr. Peterson barely glanced at the page. He flipped through the notebook quickly, not really reading anything. His face showed that he had already made up his mind. "These could be written by anyone," he said. "You could have made all of this up this morning. This is not official documentation." Amara felt like she had been slapped. Made it up? Every single entry in that notebook was real. Every dollar she had earned, she had written down the same day she got it. She remembered each family. She remembered the kids' names and their favorite games and what they liked to eat for snacks. This was 2 years of her life in this notebook. "But it's all true," Amara said. Her voice cracked a little. "I can call the families right now, they will tell you. Mrs. Johnson's number is right here. And Mrs. Chen, and the Williams family. They will all tell you that I work for them." "That won't be necessary," Mr. Peterson said coldly. "Even if these people confirm your story, we still have a problem. This is a large amount of cash. You're a minor. You came here alone. Our policies require additional scrutiny in cases like this." Sandra nodded along with everything Mr. Peterson said. She had a satisfied look on her face, like she was proud that her boss agreed with her. "We have to protect the bank," Sandra added. "There are rules about accepting cash deposits of this size, especially from young people who can't properly account for where the money came from." "I am accounting for it," Amara said. Her voice was louder now. She was getting frustrated. Why wouldn't they listen to her? "I'm showing you exactly where every dollar came from. What more do you want from me?" An elderly black woman standing in line spoke up. "Why are you giving this child such a hard time? She's trying to do something responsible. She's trying to save her money. Isn't that what banks want?" Mr. Peterson turned toward the woman with an annoyed expression. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but this is a private matter between the bank and this customer. We have our procedures for a reason." "Well, your procedures seem pretty selective," the woman said sharply. "I was here last month when a young white boy opened an account. He had cash from his summer job. I didn't see you giving him the third degree like this." Sandra's face turned red. "That was a completely different situation," she said quickly. "How was it different?" the woman asked. "He was young, he had cash, he was opening an account. Seems exactly the same to me." Other customers were starting to murmur. Some people nodded in agreement with the elderly woman. Others just looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to be anywhere else but there. One man in a business suit shook his head and walked out of the bank completely. Amara noticed a young woman in line holding up her phone. She was definitely recording. The thought of this moment being on video made Amara feel even worse. She imagined her classmates seeing this. She imagined her teachers seeing this. She imagined her dad, thousands of miles away, somehow seeing a video of his daughter being treated like a criminal in a bank. Mr. Peterson raised his voice to be heard over the growing noise in the bank. "Everyone, please. We're handling this situation according to our policies. If anyone has a problem with how we operate, you're free to take your business elsewhere." That made several people gasp. A bank manager was basically telling customers to leave if they didn't like what they were seeing. It seemed like a crazy thing to say. But Mr. Peterson wasn't done. He turned back to Amara. "I'm going to need to call our security officer over," he said. "We need to document this incident properly. You'll need to answer some more questions." "Security officer?" Amara's heart started pounding hard in her chest. This was getting worse and worse. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. Her voice was very small now. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to open a bank account." "No one said you did anything wrong," Mr. Peterson said, but his action said something very different. He waved toward a security guard who was standing near the bank's entrance. The security guard was a large man with broad shoulders. He wore a uniform with a badge and a radio on his belt. He walked over with heavy steps that echoed on the marble floor. Everyone in the bank watched him approach. To Amara, it felt like everything was moving in slow motion. "What's going on?" the guard asked Mr. Peterson. "We have a minor here trying to deposit a large amount of cash with questionable origin," Mr. Peterson explained. He talked about Amara like she wasn't standing right there in front of him. "I need you to stand by while we figure out how to proceed." Questionable origin. Those words hit Amara hard. There was nothing questionable about her money. She had worked for every single dollar. She had given up hanging out with friends on Friday and Saturday nights to babysit. She had changed diapers and wiped noses and played endless games of hide and seek. She had done homework with kids and made them mac and cheese and read bedtime stories. Every dollar represented hours of real work. The security guard positioned himself a few feet away from Amara. He didn't say anything to her. He just stood there with his arms crossed, watching her like she might run away or do something wrong. His presence made everything feel 10 times more serious and scary. Amara looked around desperately. The whole bank was watching her now. Some people looked sympathetic. Others looked curious. A few looked uncomfortable, like they knew something wrong was happening but didn't know what to do about it. No one else spoke up to defend her after the elderly woman had tried. Sandra was typing something on her computer. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "I'm filling out a suspicious activity report," she announced to Mr. Peterson. "We need to document everything properly. Suspicious activity report." Amara had no idea what that was, but it sounded official and serious. It sounded like something that went in permanent records. Would this follow her somehow? Would it affect her future? Would colleges see it? Would other banks see it? Her mind spun with worried questions. "Can I just leave?" Amara asked quietly. "Can I just take my money and go? I don't want to cause any more trouble. I'll just go home." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," Mr. Peterson said. He actually sounded a tiny bit sorry for the first time, but not sorry enough to stop what was happening. "We've started a report now. We need to complete it. We need your full name, your address, your parents' names, and contact information. This is procedure." Amara felt trapped. She had walked into this bank so happy and excited. She had felt so grown up and responsible. Now she felt small and powerless and embarrassed. Tears were pushing hard behind her eyes. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep from crying. She would not give Sandra the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "My name is Amara Williams," she said. Her voice was steady, even though she felt like breaking down. "I live at 2847 Oak Street. My father is Sergeant James Williams. He's deployed in Kuwait right now, serving our country. My mother is Angela Williams. She works as a nurse at County Hospital. She's working a double shift today, which is why she couldn't come with me. They both know I'm here. They both told me I was ready to open my own account." She said all of this clearly and with pride, even though inside she felt horrible. She wanted these people to know that she came from a good family. She wanted them to know that her father was a hero serving in the military. She wanted them to know that her mother was saving lives at the hospital. She wanted them to feel ashamed of how they were treating her. But Sandra just wrote everything down without any change in her expression. Mr. Peterson asked more questions. What school did she go to? How long had she lived at her address? Did she have any other sources of income besides babysitting? Each question felt like an accusation. Each question made Amara feel more and more like she was being interrogated for a crime. The security guard stood there silently the whole time, his presence a constant reminder that they saw her as some kind of threat. Other customers were getting impatient. The line was getting longer. People were checking their watches and sighing. One woman said loudly, "This is ridiculous. I've been waiting 20 minutes now." But she wasn't complaining about having to wait. She was complaining about how Amara was being treated. A man in line spoke up next. "I've been banking here for 10 years. I've never seen anything like this. You're harassing a kid who's trying to do something good. You should be encouraging her, not treating her like a criminal." The tension in the bank was thick enough to cut with a knife. More than a dozen people were now watching what was happening at window 3. Some looked angry. Some looked sad. Some looked afraid to get involved. But everyone was paying attention. This was not a normal day at First National Bank. Marcus Chen stood at his window pretending to organize papers, but his eyes kept darting over to Amara. He had seen her every Thursday at the community center for the past year. She came right after school to help tutor younger kids in math and reading. She was patient and kind with them. The kids loved her. Marcus volunteered as a mentor at the same center. He knew Amara was a good person. Watching her being treated this way made his stomach hurt. He thought about his own experience as a young Asian man in America. He had faced his share of unfair treatment. People making assumptions about him because of how he looked. People expecting him to be good at math or bad at driving. Stereotypes that felt harmless to some people but cut deep when you experienced them over and over. But this situation with Amara was worse. This was a girl being treated like a criminal for trying to save money she had earned honestly. Marcus made a decision. He knew it might cost him his job. He had only been working at First National Bank for 8 months. He needed this job to help pay for his college classes at night. But some things were more important than keeping your head down and staying safe. He walked over to Mr. Peterson again. This time he stood up straighter and spoke more firmly. Mr. Peterson, I really think there's been a misunderstanding here. I know this young lady. She's an honors student. She volunteers helping kids. She's not someone who would be involved in anything illegal. Can't we just verify her story with one of the families she babysits for and then open her account? Mr. Peterson turned to face Marcus with cold eyes. Marcus, I thought I told you to return to your station. This is the second time you've interrupted. If you can't follow simple directions, maybe you should go take your break early. It was a clear threat. Marcus could hear it in his supervisor's voice. Back off or face consequences. Marcus felt his courage wavering. He thought about his tuition payment due next month. He thought about his mother who had worked 2 jobs to help him get to college. He thought about disappointing her if he lost this job, but then he looked at Amara. She was fighting so hard not to cry. Her jaw was clenched tight. Her eyes were wet, but no tears had fallen yet. She was 15 years old and being humiliated in front of strangers. Someone needed to stand up for her. With respect, sir, I think this situation reflects badly on our bank, Marcus said carefully. There are people recording this on their phones. This could become a problem for us if we're not careful. Sandra made a scoffing sound. Oh, so now we're supposed to make our policies based on what people might post online? That's not how banks work, Marcus. Maybe you're too young to understand that. Her condescending tone made Marcus's face flush with anger, but before he could respond, another voice joined the conversation. He's not too young to understand right from wrong, which is more than I can say for you people. It was the elderly woman who had spoken up before. She had left her place in line and walked right up to the window. She stood next to Amara like a grandmother protecting her grandchild. I'm Mrs. Rodriguez. I've been banking here for 15 years. My husband and I have our business accounts here. Our savings accounts. Our retirement accounts, everything. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't stop harassing this child, I'm moving every single dollar to a different bank. Mr. Peterson looked flustered. Mrs. Rodriguez, I understand you're upset, but... Upset? Mrs. Rodriguez's voice got louder. I'm beyond upset. I'm disgusted. This girl has done everything right. She saved her money. She kept records. She brought her documents. She came here to learn about banking and responsibility. And you're treating her like she robbed a store? What exactly do you think she did wrong? We're simply following our procedures, Mr. Peterson said. But he was starting to sound less confident. He could see other customers nodding along with Mrs. Rodriguez. He could see phones pointed in his direction. This was not going the way he had expected. Your procedures seem pretty selective to me, Mrs. Rodriguez said. She turned to address the other customers. I was here 3 weeks ago. A teenage boy came in. White kid, looked about 16. He had a whole bunch of cash from his summer job. At least $1,000. You know what happened? The teller smiled at him. Congratulated him on working hard. Opened his account in 10 minutes. No security guard. No suspicious activity report. No 20 questions about where the money came from. Sandra's face went pale. That was different, she said weakly. How? Mrs. Rodriguez demanded. How was it different? He was a minor. He had cash. He was opening an account. The only difference I can see is the color of his skin. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Racism. No one had said it out loud yet, but now it was there, impossible to ignore. Several customers gasped. Others nodded like they had been thinking the same thing but were afraid to say it. Now wait just a minute, Mr. Peterson said. His voice was sharp and defensive. That's a serious accusation. This bank does not discriminate. We treat all customers equally. Then treat her equally, Mrs. Rodriguez shot back. Open her account. Take her money. Thank her for her business. That's what you'd do for any other 15-year-old with proper documentation and a legitimate source of income. A man in a suit who had been waiting in line spoke up. She's right. I'm an attorney. And I have to say, from what I've witnessed here, you're on very shaky legal ground. Refusing service without legitimate cause, especially when there's evidence of racial bias, could expose this bank to serious liability. Mr. Peterson looked like he had been punched. Legal liability. That phrase got his attention in a way nothing else had. Banks were terrified of lawsuits, especially discrimination lawsuits. Amara watched all of this happening around her. She felt like she was in a movie or a dream. Total strangers were fighting for her. People she had never met were taking risks to defend her. Mrs. Rodriguez, who she didn't know at all, was willing to move her money to stand up for what was right. Marcus, who she only knew casually from the community center, was risking his job to speak up. And now a lawyer was talking about suing the bank. Part of her felt grateful. These people were being so kind and brave. But another part of her felt worse. Why did she need strangers to fight her battles? Why wouldn't the bank people just listen to her in the first place? Why was opening a bank account so hard when she had done everything right? Sandra was typing furiously on her computer again. She looked stressed and angry. Mr. Peterson was wiping sweat from his forehead even though the bank was cool. The security guard still stood nearby, but now he looked uncomfortable, like he was starting to realize he was on the wrong side of this situation. More customers were speaking up now. A young woman with a baby said, "This is shameful. You should be ashamed of yourselves." An elderly man said, "I fought in Vietnam for this country. So did this girl's father, apparently. And this is how you treat a soldier's daughter?" The voices were getting louder. The crowd was getting more agitated. What had started as one girl trying to open a bank account had turned into something much bigger. It had become about fairness and dignity and respect. It had become about whether banks served all people equally or just some people. Mr. Peterson held up his hands, trying to calm everyone down. "Please, everyone, let's all just take a breath here. We're going to figure this out." But at that moment, someone near the door shouted, "Oh my God, this is already on TikTok. It has like 5,000 views!" Everyone turned to look. A teenage girl was holding up her phone. On the screen was a video of Amara standing at the window with the security guard behind her. The caption read, "Black girl treated like criminal for trying to save money at bank." This is America in 2025. Sandra looked horrified. Mr. Peterson looked sick. Marcus looked satisfied. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled grimly. 5,000 views and climbing, the teenage girl announced. 6,000 now. People are sharing it everywhere. Mr. Peterson pulled out his own phone. He quickly typed something, probably trying to search for the video himself. His face went from red to white in seconds. "This is a disaster," he muttered, but everyone could hear him. Amara didn't know whether to feel vindicated or more humiliated. Yes, people online were supporting her, but now thousands of strangers were watching the worst moment of her life. This video would be out there forever. People at her school would see it. Her teachers would see it. Her dad's military friends would see it. Everyone would know about the time she was treated like a criminal at a bank. Sandra tried to take control of the situation. "This is all getting blown out of proportion. We were simply doing our jobs, following protocols. If people would just calm down and let us handle this professionally." Professionally? Marcus couldn't stay quiet anymore, even though he knew he was probably getting fired. There was nothing professional about this. You made up your mind about her the second she walked up to your window. You saw a black girl with cash and assumed the worst. That's not protocol. That's prejudice. Sandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked at Mr. Peterson for backup, but he was still staring at his phone in horror, watching the video and reading comments. The lobby had descended into chaos. Multiple conversations were happening at once. Some people were arguing with bank employees. Others were on their phones, probably sharing the video themselves. A few people had left the line entirely, disgusted by what they had seen. And Amara stood in the middle of it all, still clutching her purple backpack with her life savings inside. She still didn't have a bank account. She had been in this bank for 45 minutes, and all she had to show for it was humiliation, a suspicious activity report, and a viral video. She looked at her notebook, at the careful records she had kept for 2 years. She looked at her bag of money earned $1 at a time. She thought about her dad, who had taught her to be responsible and organized. She thought about all the Friday and Saturday nights she had given up to save this money, and she wondered if it had all been for nothing. The noise in the bank was overwhelming now. So many voices talking at once, so many people angry and upset. Amara wanted to cover her ears. She wanted to run out of the bank and never come back. She wanted to go home and hide in her room and pretend this day had never happened. But just as she was about to grab her money and leave, the front doors of the bank burst open with such force that everyone stopped talking and turned to look. A tall man in an expensive suit strode into the lobby. He looked furious. His eyes swept across the crowded lobby, taking in the angry customers, the security guard, the phones recording, and finally landing on Amara standing at window 3. "What in God's name is going on in my bank?" the man demanded in a voice that commanded attention. Mr. Peterson's face went even whiter than before. His mouth fell open. "Mr. Blake," he stammered, we didn't know you were coming." The man, apparently named Mr. Blake, pulled out his own phone. "Of course you didn't. I was driving past when my assistant called me. Apparently there's a video trending on social media about one of my branches harassing a teenage girl. A video that's been viewed over 50,000 times in the last 20 minutes. A video that's making my bank look like it's run by bigots. So I'll ask again, what is going on here?" The whole bank fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. Jonathan Blake was not having a good day, and it was about to get much worse. He had been driving back to the main office after a lunch meeting when his assistant, Sarah, called. Her voice was tight with stress, the way it got when something serious was happening. Jonathan had learned to recognize that tone over the 15 years Sarah had worked for him. "Mr. Blake, we have a situation," Sarah had said. "One of our branches is trending on social media." "It's not good." Jonathan pulled over immediately. Sarah sent him the link. He watched the video on his phone screen, and his blood pressure climbed with every second. A young black girl, a security guard standing over her, a bank employee treating her like a criminal, comments pouring in by the hundreds, all of them angry, all of them accusing First National Bank of racism. 50,000 views when Sarah called him. 75,000 by the time he watched it twice. 100,000 by the time he pulled up to the Oak Street branch. The video was spreading like wildfire, and every view was another person forming an opinion about his bank. An opinion that his bank was prejudiced. An opinion that his bank discriminated. An opinion that would cost them customers and trust and possibly millions of dollars. But more than the business implications, Jonathan was angry about the principle of the thing. He had grown up poor. His parents had immigrated from Jamaica with almost nothing. They had worked brutal hours at jobs that barely paid minimum wage. They had faced discrimination themselves. Jonathan remembered his mother being followed around stores by security guards who assumed she would steal. He remembered his father being passed over for promotions by men with half his qualifications. He had built his career in banking specifically to make financial services more accessible and fair. He had created programs for underserved communities. He had hired diverse staff. He had implemented training about unconscious bias. And now, despite all of that, there was a video of a 15-year-old girl being humiliated in one of his branches. So when Jonathan Blake walked through those doors, he was not coming to smooth things over or make excuses. He was coming to fix a problem and hold people accountable. The scene in the lobby was worse than he had imagined. At least 20 customers were packed in there, many of them angry and agitated. Phones were pointed in multiple directions. A security guard stood near a young black girl who looked like she was about to cry. His branch manager and a teller looked guilty and defensive at the same time. "Mr. Blake," Mr. Peterson stammered again. He looked like he might faint. "This is unexpected. We're handling a situation here with a customer deposit that raised some red flags." Jonathan looked at the girl. She was young, probably high school age. She wore jeans and a t-shirt from some coding camp. She had a purple backpack clutched to her chest. On the counter in front of her was a plastic bag with cash and a notebook. She looked terrified and embarrassed and angry all at once. "Red flags?" Jonathan repeated. His voice was cold. "What red flags would those be?" Sandra, the teller, spoke up. She had worked at this branch for over 20 years. She thought her seniority gave her some kind of immunity. "Sir, she's a minor trying to deposit a large amount of cash with questionable origin. We were following protocol for suspicious transactions." Jonathan walked closer to the window. He looked at the money in the bag. Mostly small bills. 10s and 20s and 5s. The kind of bills you got from babysitting or mowing lawns or other teenage jobs. Not the kind of bills you got from anything illegal. "How much money are we talking about?" he asked. $847, Mr. Peterson said. Jonathan raised his eyebrows. $847. And you consider that a large amount requiring suspicious activity reports and security guards? For a minor with no verifiable income source, yes, Sandra said. She was doubling down, still convinced she was right. Jonathan turned to the girl. When he spoke to her, his voice was completely different. It was warm and gentle. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Amara Williams," she said quietly. Her voice shook a little bit. "Amara, it's very nice to meet you, even under these unfortunate circumstances. I'm Jonathan Blake. I'm the regional CEO of this bank. Can you tell me where you got this money?" Amara took a shaky breath. She had already explained this multiple times, but she explained it again. "I saved it from babysitting, sir. I work for 5 families in my neighborhood. I've been saving for 2 years to buy a laptop for my coding classes. I kept records of every job I did." She held up her notebook. Jonathan took it and actually looked at it. Really looked at it. He saw the neat columns, the careful handwriting, the dates going back 2 years, the running totals, the family names and amounts. This was not something someone had made up that morning. This was real documentation kept by a responsible young person. "These are excellent records," Jonathan said. "Very organized." "Someone taught you well?" "My dad," Amara said. A tear finally escaped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "He's in the army. He's deployed right now. He always says keeping good records is important." Jonathan felt something crack in his chest. A soldier's daughter, being treated like this in his bank while her father served overseas. It was almost too perfect an example of everything wrong with what had happened here. He turned back to Mr. Peterson and Sandra. His gentle expression vanished. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. A teenage girl with meticulous financial records, documentation proving she's a student, and money clearly saved over 2 years from legitimate work, came into this bank to open a savings account. And your response was to call security and file a suspicious activity report?" "We were following protocols," Mr. Peterson repeated, but he said it with less confidence now. "Show me these protocols," Jonathan demanded. "Show me exactly where in our policy manual it says that teenagers with documented savings should be treated as criminals." Mr. Peterson and Sandra looked at each other. They couldn't show him because no such protocol existed. What they had done was not based on policy. It was based on assumption and prejudice. An elderly woman stepped forward. Jonathan recognized her. Mrs. Rodriguez. She had accounts totaling over $500,000 at this branch. She was a valued customer. "Mr. Blake, I can tell you what I witnessed. I was here 3 weeks ago when a white teenage boy opened an account with over $1,000 in cash. Your staff was friendly and helpful. They congratulated him. No security guard. No interrogation. The whole thing took 10 minutes. Jonathan closed his eyes briefly. This was exactly what he had been afraid of. Not just one incident of bad judgment, but a pattern. Different treatment for different people based on how they looked. "Mrs. Rodriguez, thank you for that information," he said. "And thank you for speaking up today on Amara's behalf. We need more customers willing to hold us accountable." He turned to address the entire lobby. "Everyone, I want to apologize on behalf of First National Bank. What happened here today is not acceptable. It does not represent our values or our mission. We clearly have work to do to ensure all customers are treated with equal respect and dignity." Several people nodded. A few looked surprised that he was being so direct about the bank's failure. Others still looked angry, like an apology was not enough. Jonathan looked at the young bank employee who was standing near window 4. The kid had tried to speak up for Amara and been shot down. "You," Jonathan said, pointing. "What's your name?" "Marcus Chen, sir." "Marcus, you tried to vouch for this young lady, is that correct?" "Yes, sir. I know Amara from the community center. She volunteers there. She's a good person. I didn't think it was right how she was being treated." Jonathan nodded. "Thank you, Marcus, for having the courage to speak up even when your supervisor told you not to. That takes integrity. We need more employees like you." Marcus looked relieved and surprised. He had expected to get in trouble, not praised. Jonathan turned back to Mr. Peterson and Sandra. "As for you two, we're going to have a very long conversation about what happened here. But that conversation will happen in private. For now, I want you to step away from this customer." "Sir, we need to complete the paperwork," Sandra protested weakly. "No," Jonathan said firmly. "You're done here. Go to my office and wait for me." Sandra looked like she wanted to argue, but the expression on Jonathan's face stopped her. She and Mr. Peterson walked toward the back offices like students being sent to the principal. The security guard followed them. looking relieved to escape the situation. Jonathan turned back to Amara. The lobby was still full of people watching, but he didn't care. This needed to be made right publicly since it had gone wrong publicly. Amara, I am so sorry for what you experienced here today. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You came here to do something responsible and mature, and my employees treated you terribly. That's on us, not on you. Amara nodded but didn't say anything. She was still processing everything that had happened in the last hour. Her emotions were all mixed up. Relief that someone important was finally listening. Anger at how she had been treated. Embarrassment that it had happened in front of so many people. Gratitude to the strangers who had defended her. I'd like to personally help you open your savings account, Jonathan said. If you're still willing to bank with us after this disaster. Amara looked uncertain. I don't know, she said honestly. This was really bad. I understand, Jonathan said. And if you decide you'd rather bank somewhere else, I wouldn't blame you at all. But I'm hoping you'll give us a chance to do better. And I promise you this. What happened today will lead to real changes in how we operate. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke up again. I'll stay too. I was ready to move all my money. But if you're serious about fixing this, Mr. Blake, then I'll give you that chance. Other customers murmured agreement. Some said they would stay. Others said they still weren't sure. A few said they were definitely leaving. Jonathan accepted all of it. He knew that trust once broken was hard to rebuild. He gestured toward his office. Amara, would you please come with me? And Mrs. Rodriguez, would you mind joining us? I'd like a witness to make sure everything is done properly. Marcus, you too. The four of them walked toward Jonathan's office, leaving the crowded lobby behind. Amara carried her purple backpack and her notebook and her plastic bag of money. All the things that should have been enough in the first place. As they walked, Jonathan made a mental list of everything that needed to happen. Sandra would be suspended, possibly fired. Mr. Peterson would be demoted at minimum. The entire staff would undergo immediate retraining. Policies would be reviewed. That suspicious activity report would be destroyed, and he would personally make sure Amara's experience turned into something positive. But first he needed to help a 15-year-old girl open a bank account. Something that should have been simple and happy from the start. Something he would make sure never went this wrong again. The office door closed behind them, and for the first time in over an hour, Amara felt like she could breathe. She was safe now. Someone with power had finally listened. Someone with authority had finally believed her. She didn't know it yet, but this awful day was about to turn into something that would change not just her life, but the lives of many other young people who came after her. Jonathan's office was different from what Amara had expected. She thought a CEO's office would be cold and intimidating with dark wood furniture and serious paintings, but this office had comfortable chairs in soft blue fabric. There were photos on the walls of Jonathan with various community groups. One photo showed him handing an oversized check to a youth organization. Another showed him at what looked like a financial literacy workshop with teenagers. Please sit down, Jonathan said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. Amara sat with Mrs. Rodriguez on one side and Marcus on the other. Having them there made her feel safer, like she had people on her side. Jonathan sat behind his desk but leaned forward with his elbows on the surface, making himself less intimidating. Amara, before we open your account, I need to understand exactly what happened out there. Not the version Mr. Peterson will tell me, but your version. Take your time and tell me everything. So Amara did. She started from the beginning. How excited she had been to come to the bank today. How she had saved for 2 years. How she had checked the website and called ahead to make sure she had everything she needed. How Sandra's attitude had changed the moment she saw the cash. How the questions had felt like accusations. How the security guard had made her feel like a criminal. How humiliated she felt when everyone was staring at her. Her voice shook sometimes while she talked. A few more tears escaped, but she kept going. She showed Jonathan her notebook again, explaining each entry. She showed him the letters of recommendation she had brought from the families she babysat for. She showed him her student ID and the certificate from her school's financial literacy program. Jonathan examined everything carefully. He read every letter. One was from the Johnson family, praising Amara's responsibility and care for their twin boys. Another was from the Chen family, calling her the most trustworthy young person we've ever met. A third was from the Williams family, saying their daughter had improved in school because of Amara's tutoring help. These are remarkable, Jonathan said quietly. These families clearly trust you very much. I work hard for them, Amara said. I really care about the kids I watch. It's not just a job to me. Jonathan set down the letters and looked directly at Amara. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me clearly. What happened to you today was wrong. It was discriminatory. It was unfair. And it never should have happened. Amara nodded. She had known it was wrong, but hearing someone in authority say it out loud made it feel real and validated. I also need you to know why it happened, Jonathan continued. Not to excuse it, but so you understand. Sandra and Mr. Peterson saw a young black girl with cash and they made assumptions. Those assumptions were based on prejudice and stereotypes. They saw you and decided you couldn't have earned that money honestly. They didn't see your hard work or your responsibility. They just saw your skin color and made judgments. Mrs. Rodriguez made an angry sound. I knew it. I knew that's what this was about. You were right to call it out, Jonathan told her, and I'm grateful you did. Too many people see discrimination happening and stay silent. You spoke up and that matters. Marcus shifted in his chair. Mr. Blake, I have to ask. What's going to happen to Sandra and Mr. Peterson? Because if nothing changes, this will just happen again to someone else. Jonathan appreciated the question. Fair question, Marcus. Sandra is being suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Mr. Peterson is being demoted. He'll no longer be a supervisor at any of our branches. Both will undergo extensive training on bias and discrimination if they want to continue working for this bank. And honestly, I'm not sure Sandra will be coming back at all. Good, Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. She's been working at that branch as long as I've been banking there. I always thought something was off about her attitude with certain customers. That comment made Jonathan's jaw tighten. How many other people has she treated this way? How many other customers felt unwelcome because of Sandra's prejudice? The thought made him angry all over again. We're going to find out. We're going to review complaints and talk to staff. He pulled out a form from his drawer. A real account opening form, not the suspicious activity report Sandra had been preparing. Amara, let's get you set up properly. I'm going to open this account myself and I'm going to do it the right way. For the next 20 minutes, Jonathan walked Amara through the process. He explained different types of accounts and helped her choose a savings account with no monthly fees for students. He explained how interest worked, how she would get a debit card, how she could access her money through ATMs and online banking. He was patient and thorough, treating her like a valued customer, not a suspected criminal. When they got to the part about depositing her money, Jonathan carefully counted the cash. $847, he confirmed. This represents a lot of hard work, Amara. A lot of Friday and Saturday nights. A lot of patience with kids. You should be very proud of yourself. Thank you, Amara said. For the first time since entering the bank, she smiled a little. Jonathan entered the deposit into the computer. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his company checkbook. Amara, I'd like to add something to your account. $500 from the bank as an apology for what you went through today, and as a scholarship for your education. Amara's eyes went wide. $500? That's too much. I can't. You can and you will, Jonathan said firmly but kindly. Consider it our investment in your future. You're learning to code, right? You want that laptop for your classes. Well, now you're $500 closer to that goal. Tears filled Amara's eyes again, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief and gratitude and disbelief that something good was coming from this horrible day. Mrs. Rodriguez put a hand on Amara's shoulder. You deserve it, sweetie. After what you went through, you deserve so much more. Jonathan finished the paperwork and printed out a receipt. There you go. Your account is officially open. You'll get your debit card in the mail in about a week. And here's your deposit receipt showing your balance of $1,347. Amara stared at the receipt. It felt surreal. She had walked into this bank expecting to deposit $847. She had been treated terribly, humiliated publicly, and accused of being a criminal. But now she was leaving with more money than she came with and a promise that things would change. Thank you, she said to Jonathan. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for making it right. You don't need to thank me for doing what should have been done from the start, Jonathan said. But I do want to ask you something. Would you be willing to work with us going forward? I meant what I said about making real changes. We're going to create a youth banking program. We're going to train our staff better, and having input from young people like you would be invaluable. Amara thought about it. Part of her wanted nothing to do with this bank ever again. But another, part of her thought about all the other teenagers who might face what she faced. If she could help prevent that, maybe this awful experience could turn into something meaningful. I'll think about it, she said. I need some time. Today was a lot. Of course, Jonathan said. No pressure at all. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'd be honored to have your input. He stood up and reached across the desk to shake her hand like she was an adult and equal. Amara stood and shook his hand firmly, the way her dad had taught her. Marcus, Jonathan said, turning to the young employee. Thank you for speaking up today even when it was risky. That kind of moral courage is rare. I'm promoting you to assistant manager effective immediately. We need more people like you in leadership positions. Marcus looked stunned. Sir, thank you. I just did what was right. Exactly, Jonathan said. You did what was right even when it was hard. That's what real integrity looks like. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up too. Mr. Blake, I'm going to hold you to your promises. I'm going to watch what happens with this bank. And if I don't see real changes, I'll be back in this office raising hell. Jonathan laughed. I would expect nothing less, Mrs. Rodriguez. In fact, I'd like you to serve on our community advisory board. We need people who aren't afraid to call us out when we're wrong. You've got yourself a deal, Mrs. Rodriguez said, shaking his hand. The four of them walked back out to the lobby together. The crowd had thinned out, but there were still plenty of customers and employees watching. Everyone looked up when they emerged from the office. Jonathan addressed the lobby one more time. Everyone, I want to thank you for your patience during this difficult situation. Amara's account has been opened successfully. Changes are being made to ensure something like this never happens again at any First National Bank branch. If you have concerns or complaints about how you've been treated at our bank, please don't hesitate to contact me directly. He pulled out business cards and handed them to several customers. My direct line is on there, I mean it. Call me if you see something that's not right. Some people looked satisfied. Others still looked skeptical. A few nodded with respect. It would take time to rebuild trust, Jonathan knew, but at least he was starting. As Amara prepared to leave, several customers approached her. The woman who had been recording earlier said, I'm sorry you went through that, but you handled yourself with so much grace. My video has over 200,000 views now. People are on your side. The lawyer who had spoken up said, Young lady, if you ever need legal advice or representation for anything, here's my card. What I saw today was unacceptable, and I'm glad it's being addressed. Even some of the employees approached to apologize. One older teller said, I should have said something. I saw what was happening and I stayed quiet. I'm sorry. Amara accepted the apologies and the business cards. She was exhausted. The adrenaline that had kept her going was wearing off, and she just wanted to go home. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to drive her. Come on, sweetie, let's get you home. I'm sure your mother is worried. She doesn't know yet, Amara admitted. She's at work. I was supposed to text her when it was done, but it turned into a whole thing, Mrs. Rodriguez finished. Well, you can tell her now that it worked out, and you can show her that receipt. As they walked to Mrs. Rodriguez's car, Amara looked back at the bank. Just a few hours ago, she had walked through those doors full of excitement. She had left full of trauma, but also with unexpected allies and an account worth more than she had imagined. She thought about her dad overseas. She couldn't wait to tell him about her bank account. Well, maybe she would skip some of the details about the middle part, but she would tell him about Jonathan and Mrs. Rodriguez and Marcus. She would tell him about people who stood up for what was right, and she would tell him that even when things were really bad, good people could make a difference. Sometimes, all it took was one person with power using that power correctly. Sometimes all it took was strangers being willing to speak up. Sometimes justice actually did happen, even if it took longer than it should have. Amara got into Mrs. Rodriguez's car with her purple backpack and her notebook and her receipt showing 1,347. She had come to the bank to learn about financial responsibility. She had learned that, but she had also learned something bigger. She had learned about prejudice and discrimination. She had learned about courage and solidarity. She had learned that her voice mattered even when people tried to silence it. It was the hardest lesson she had ever learned, but maybe it was also the most important one. 3 months had passed since that terrible Tuesday at First National Bank. The video of Amara's experience had been viewed over 3 million times. News stations had picked up the story. Reporters had called Amara's house asking for interviews. The story had spread far beyond anyone's imagination. But Amara had stayed quiet at first. She needed time to process what happened. She needed time to heal from the humiliation and anger. Her mother had been furious when she found out. Her father, calling from Kuwait, had been so upset that Amara worried about his blood pressure. Both of her parents wanted to sue the bank, wanted to make a big public statement. But Amara asked them to wait. She wanted to see if Jonathan Blake would keep his promises. She wanted to see if real change would happen, or if it was just empty words meant to calm people down. And Jonathan did keep his promises. Every single one. Sandra Mitchell was fired 2 weeks after the incident. The investigation revealed that she had treated several other minority customers poorly over the years. There had been complaints, but they had been buried or ignored. Not anymore. Sandra tried to fight her termination, but the evidence was too strong. She was gone. Robert Peterson was demoted from supervisor to regular teller. He was required to complete 40 hours of training on unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and fair banking practices. He was also placed on probation for 6 months. If he slipped up even once, he would be fired. The demotion meant less pay and less authority. His ego took a major hit, which was exactly what needed to happen. Marcus Chen was promoted to assistant manager as promised. He became the youngest person in that position at any First National Bank branch. Marcus used his new authority to make sure every customer was treated with respect. He paid special attention to young customers and people of color, making sure they felt welcome and valued. But the changes went far beyond just 3 employees. Jonathan created a mandatory training program for all bank staff. Every single employee, from tellers to managers to security guards, had to complete the training. It covered unconscious bias, microaggressions, cultural competency, and fair treatment of all customers. Employees who failed the training or showed resistance were let go. Jonathan also created something called the Youth Financial Empowerment Program. It was designed specifically to help teenagers learn about banking without fear or intimidation. The program offered free financial literacy workshops. It provided special account options with no fees for students. It trained staff on how to work with young customers respectfully. And Jonathan asked Amara to be part of creating this program. After thinking about it for a month, Amara agreed. She met with Jonathan and his team several times. She told them what would have made her feel welcome at the bank. She explained what kinds of questions were helpful versus what felt like interrogation. She described what documentation teenagers typically have and what's reasonable to ask for. Her input shaped the entire program. There were posters in every branch now showing diverse young people successfully banking. There were special youth-friendly teller windows where teenagers could open accounts without judgment. There was a clear policy that small cash deposits from minors would be welcomed, not suspected. The program launched 2 months after Amara's incident. The first workshop was held at the Oak Street branch where everything had happened. 40 teenagers showed up, many of them young people of color who had been afraid to go to banks before. Amara attended as a special guest. When Jonathan introduced her and told her story, the room erupted in applause. One girl, maybe 13 years old, raised her hand. "I've been saving money for my small business selling friendship bracelets online, but I was scared to go to a bank because I thought they wouldn't take me seriously. After hearing your story, I'm going to open an account today." And she did. So did 15 other teenagers that day. They opened accounts with money from babysitting, lawn mowing, dog walking, online sales, birthday gifts, and allowances. Every single one of them was treated with respect and encouragement. Every single one of them left the bank feeling proud instead of ashamed. Mrs. Rodriguez became a hero in the community. People recognized her from the video as the woman who had stood up for Amara. She joined the community advisory board as Jonathan had asked. She attended every meeting and pushed for even more changes. She made sure the bank was keeping its promises. The advisory board now included people from all different backgrounds. There was Mrs. Rodriguez representing longtime customers. There was a representative from the NAACP. There was a local minister whose church was in a predominantly black neighborhood. There was a young mother who received public assistance. There was a representative from the Latino Business Association, and there was a spot reserved for a young person, which rotated every 6 months. This board had real power. They reviewed bank policies. They heard complaints from customers. They made recommendations that Jonathan had to address. It wasn't just for show. It was real accountability. The story made national news. Jonathan was invited to speak at a banking industry conference in Chicago. He stood in front of hundreds of other banking executives and told them what happened at his branch. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't make excuses. He told the truth about discrimination in banking and what it cost in terms of trust and community relationships. "We lost customers over this incident," Jonathan told the conference. "We lost trust. We damaged our reputation. But more importantly, we hurt a 15-year-old girl who had done nothing wrong. That's the real cost. Not the financial cost, but the human cost." He challenged other banks to examine their own practices. He shared the training materials his bank had developed. He offered to help other institutions create similar youth programs. Some banking executives were receptive. Others were defensive. But the conversation was happening, and that mattered. The video of Jonathan's speech was shared widely. People were surprised to see a CEO take full responsibility instead of making excuses. They were impressed that he turned a crisis into an opportunity for real change. First National Bank's reputation actually improved because of how Jonathan handled the situation after the initial incident. Meanwhile, Amara's life had changed in ways she never expected. She became a voice for fair banking practices for young people. She was invited to speak at her school assembly about financial literacy. She was asked to write an article for the local newspaper about her experience. She even did a few television interviews, though she was nervous about being on camera. The attention was overwhelming sometimes. Amara was naturally shy and didn't love being in the spotlight. But she recognized that her story could help other people. If sharing what happened to her could prevent it from happening to someone else, then the spotlight was worth it. And she finally got her laptop. With the money from her account, plus some additional funds her father sent when he heard about everything, Amara bought a high-quality laptop perfect for coding. She used it every day for her programming classes. Her skills improved rapidly. One day, about 3 months after the incident, Amara had an idea. She was thinking about her babysitting work and how she had found her clients mostly through word of mouth and neighborhood connections. What if there was an app that connected teenage service providers with families who needed help? An app that verified both the teenagers and the families. An app that handled payments securely. An app that let teenagers build real work portfolios. She started designing the app. She called it YouthServe. She worked on it every day after school and on weekends. She taught herself new coding languages to build the features she wanted. When she got stuck, she reached out to her computer science teacher and to online coding communities. After 2 months of intensive work, she had a working prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Users could create profiles. Teenagers could list their services like babysitting, tutoring, pet care, lawn work, and more. Families could search for service providers in their area. The app included a rating system, background check verification for older teens, and secure payment processing. Amara showed the app to Jonathan during one of their program meetings. He was amazed. "Amara, this is incredible. You built this yourself?" "Mostly," Amara said with pride. "I had help with some of the payment processing code, but the design and most of the functionality is all me." Jonathan saw the potential immediately. This could help so many young people. Not just with finding work, but with building credibility. They'd have verified reviews and payment history. No more being questioned about where their money came from. He offered to help her develop it further. He connected her with a small business advisor at the bank. He introduced her to a lawyer who could help with legal issues around an app for minors. He even offered a small business loan at 0 interest to help with development costs. Amara accepted the help. Over the next few months, YouthServe grew from a prototype to a real platform. They beta tested it with 50 teenagers and 30 families in the local area. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Parents loved having a safe, verified way to find help. Teenagers loved having a professional platform to showcase their skills and earn money. 6 months after the bank incident, YouthServe officially launched. Local news covered the story of how a terrible experience led to Amara creating something positive. The app spread quickly through schools and neighborhoods. Within 3 months, over 500 teenagers and 200 families were using it in their city alone. Other cities wanted it too. Amara received requests from people in different states asking when YouthServe would be available in their area. She was only 16 years old and already running a small business that was helping people. Her father came home from deployment in month 8. When Amara picked him up from the airport with her mother and brothers, the first thing he said was, "Show me that bank account you told me about." They went to First National Bank the next day. Sergeant James Williams walked into the Oak Street branch in his dress uniform. Amara held his hand, no longer afraid or anxious about being in that building. Everything was different now. Marcus, now the branch's assistant manager, personally helped them. He showed Sergeant Williams his daughter's account. The balance was now over $5,000 from her YouthServe earnings and continued babysitting work. "Sir, your daughter is one of the most impressive young people I've ever met," Marcus told Sergeant Williams. What happened to her here was wrong, but what she did with that experience was remarkable. Sergeant Williams looked at his daughter with tears in his eyes. "I'm so proud of you, baby girl. Not just for the money you saved, but for how you handled everything, for standing up for yourself, for turning something bad into something good." That evening, the Williams family went out to dinner to celebrate. They celebrated Sergeant Williams being home safely. They celebrated Amara's success with YouthServe. They celebrated the fact that things had actually changed at the bank. They celebrated justice even though it had come the hard way. At dinner, Amara's little brother asked, "Are you famous now?" Amara laughed. "No, I'm not famous. I just did what I needed to do." "You stood up for yourself," her mother said. "That's what you did. You didn't let them treat you badly. You didn't accept it. And you helped make sure they won't treat other people that way either." Her father raised his glass of soda. A toast. To Amara, for being brave, for being smart, for being strong, and for showing us all that one person really can make a difference. They clinked glasses and Amara felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the food. She thought about that awful Tuesday 3 months ago. She thought about how scared and humiliated she had felt. She thought about how she had almost given up and walked out, but she hadn't given up. And neither had the people who stood up for her. Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus, the customers who spoke up, Jonathan who made real changes. All of them together had turned something terrible into something better. First National Bank was now training other banks on their youth program. Jonathan had been invited to speak at 3 more conferences. The Youth Financial Empowerment Program had been adopted by 12 other branches across the state. Hundreds of teenagers had opened accounts without fear or judgment. The Community Advisory Board was making sure promises were kept. And it all started because a 15-year-old girl refused to accept that she deserved to be treated badly. Because she stood her ground even when she was scared. Because she had the courage to keep pushing for what was right. Amara logged into her YouthServe app that night and saw a new message from a user. It was from a 14-year-old girl who had just opened her first bank account using money she earned through the app. The message said, "Thank you for creating this. Thank you for your story. You inspired me to be brave too." Amara smiled and typed back, "You're welcome. Keep being brave. Keep saving your money. Keep standing up for yourself. You've got this." She closed her laptop, the laptop she had worked 2 years to afford, the laptop that had seemed so far away on that Tuesday afternoon when everything went wrong. But she had it now. She had earned it, honestly. She had saved responsibly, and no one could ever take that away from her or make her feel bad about it. The next day at school, Amara's computer science teacher pulled her aside. "I'm submitting your name for a Youth Technology Innovation Award. YouthServe deserves recognition. You deserve recognition." "Thank you," Amara said, "but I didn't do it for awards. I did it because there was a problem that needed solving." "That's exactly why you deserve recognition," her teacher said. "Real innovation comes from people who see problems and create solutions. You're going to do amazing things, Amara. This is just the beginning." Maybe it was. Maybe that terrible day at the bank was the beginning of something bigger than she could have imagined. Maybe every challenge was an opportunity if you had the courage to face it and the creativity to find solutions. Amara didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew she was ready for it. She had faced discrimination and come out stronger. She had been knocked down and gotten back up. She had turned pain into purpose and anger into action. And most importantly, she had learned that she had a voice that mattered, that she deserved respect, that she could make a difference. Those were lessons worth more than any amount of money in any bank account. As she walked through the school hallway, a younger student approached her shyly. "Are you Amara Williams? The girl from that bank video?" Amara nodded. "Yeah, that's me." "I just wanted to say thank you," the girl said. "My mom and I watched your video together. We're immigrants and sometimes people treat us badly in stores and places. But after we saw how you stood up for yourself, my mom said we don't have to accept that anymore. So thank you." The girl hurried away before Amara could respond. But Amara didn't need to respond. That moment said everything. Her story had reached people. It had empowered them. It had reminded them of their worth. Amara continued to her coding class with a smile on her face. She had homework to finish, an app to improve, and a future to build. The past was behind her. The lessons learned were inside her. And the possibilities ahead were endless. Sometimes the worst days lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes standing up for yourself changes not just your life, but many lives. Sometimes justice takes time and effort and the courage of multiple people. But it comes. And sometimes a 15-year-old girl with a purple backpack and $847 can change the world, one bank account at a time.